Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And if you've watched this show or listened to this show, you definitely know that I do love highlighting women in sports. And my next guest is a very influential woman in sports. If you don't know, of course, she was the CEO of the Raiders. I'd like to bring in Miss Amy Trask. How you doing?
I am doing well, and I thank you for inviting me to join you. It's really an honor to do so.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Now, of course, I would love to get everyone the chance to get to know you because, of course, some people don't and they should, but they don't. So I want to kind of bring them into you and kind of the growth of who you are and how you became who you are. Um, Now, first, of course, I did do a little bit of reading about say your parents weren't necessarily into sports. So, kind of, how did you kind of find your way into liking sports and football?
Well, they were into sports in the sense that on the weekends, my family was out doing things, whatever it was, something in nature, something on the beach, something in the ocean. My family were out and about on the weekends. They weren't home watching football. They certainly watched the Super Bowl every year. They had a party or went to a party, but they were not stay at home, watch football on Sunday family members. Well, I started junior high, and back in the day and age when I went to junior high, it started in seventh grade. I think in a lot of places now it starts in sixth grade, but it was seventh grade, and I went to my first football game in person, a junior high school game. And I just fell in love with the game of football. Certainly it is an exciting game, and it's fast and it's strong and it's powerful. It's also a very, very cerebral game. It's a game, as you well know, of matchups. How does my pass protection match up against your pass rush? How do my defensive backs match up against your wide receivers, and so on and so forth? So I really fell in love with the game. It's like a game of chess with very strong, very powerful, very fast chess pieces. So I was the person in the family who wanted to stay home and watch football on the weekends while everybody was out and about. And that's when I really started loving the game of football.
Nice, nice. Now, of course, we mentioned in the game of football, but of course, we've got to mention the Raiders. Now, when did you first kind of, I guess, come across the Raiders and kind of get your feel for the Raiders?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, and the Raiders were not down here at the time I was, and I say here because I'm in Los Angeles again now. So I really grew to know the Raiders when I was in college at UC Berkeley. Cal Berkeley, UC Berkeley, whatever one wants to call it, I call it Cal, was really just up the road from where the Raiders played at the time. And I fell in love with everything about the team. You would watch games. The road team would get off the bus at the stadium, and the men would be getting out with sports coats on and carrying briefcases. And then you'd watch the Raider games, and the team bus would pull up to the stadium, and men would just tumble out looking like, as one would say, something the cat had dragged in. No coats, no briefcases, and they just went on and took the field and won. And the thing that really, really resonated with me was this was an organization, the owner of which, Al Davis, gave people second chances and third chances and even more chances than many people thought he should. He didn't care if someone had been labeled a behavior problem or worse somewhere else. And as the kid who was labeled a behavior problem in kindergarten, that resonated with me. I just loved everything about the team.
Nice, nice. Now, now, of course, you didn't start out as the CEO of the Raiders. So, can you tell everyone kind of where you started in terms of with the Raiders?
Sure. I started as an intern. I was having gone to Cal, and then I moved back down to Los Angeles to go to graduate school. By happenstance, fate, karma, kismet, something, the year I came down back to Los Angeles to go to grad school was the same year that Al ultimately moved the team to Los Angeles. He had tried to do so a few years earlier, but been ordered back by the court. And ultimately the team came down to Los Angeles the same year I came back. So I contacted the team about doing an internship while I was in grad school. And I did an internship. And, I wanted to be part of the organization. My role did not matter to me. So, yes, you're right. I ultimately became the CEO of the team. Titles have never been important to me. If my job with the team had been, to pick up scrunched up cups on the sideline, I'd have been happy to be part of the organization, contributing as I could, and I would be the best scrunched up paper cup picker upper that I could be.
Now, of course, you did rise to the CEO, which is 1997, of course, through 2013. How did that come about, if you don't mind me asking?
Of course, I don't mind. There's no real hard, good answer to it. It sort of evolved over time. I really and truly mean this with every bit of oomph I had. I was just so thrilled to be part of the organization and to contribute in any way I could, that whatever my role was, my role was. But I wanted to learn about the organization, and I did that. I walked around the organization. I would walk into the ticket office before a home game. This was when I just started out as an intern, but it continued through all my years in the organization. And, if they were organizing will call envelopes, I would say, I'll alphabetize them for you. And I would sit and alphabetize the will call envelopes and learn about the ticket office as I did so. And I continued to do that throughout my years with the organization. Even as the CEO, if I learned that the ticket office was inundated with phone calls, I'd go downstairs and I'd say, put me on a phone. And I'd grab that phone and I would answer the phone. Raiders, how can I help you? When you're part of an organization, you contribute, or you should contribute, in my view, however you can. It always not amazes anymore. I guess it amazed me initially. Now it just annoys me, bemuses me, whatever word we want to use, when people in a sports organization talk about, you got to be a teammate. You got to be a good teammate. And they'll be critical of players on the field. Wow, the guard should have slid over and helped the tackle. The tackle was struggling. Why didn't the guard go help him? Or, boy, that corner was having trouble helping. The safety should have gone over and helped. Well, you got to apply the same thing to yourself in the front office. If you see someone else in another department struggling to get his or her job done, go help. That's what it means to be a teammate. And that doesn't only apply on the field, it applies off the field as well.
Definitely, definitely. Now, what can you say is one of the more memorable stories that you have as being the CEO of the Raiders?
Well, one of the most memorable stories, I apologize if I get choked up. I, to this day, become very emotional when I think about it. I was having a meeting in the offices, in the Raider offices, with a company with which I wanted us to do business. I wanted to attract them to do business with us. So I had a number of teammates within the organization. We were prepared for the meeting. We were getting ready for the meeting. And I thought it would be very, very valuable to us if Al attended. So I say Al, I know you know who I'm talking about. For anyone who's listening who may not, I'm referring to Al Davis, the primary owner of the team. So I approached him and said, look, we're having a meeting. Here's the business with which we're meeting. I'm trying to get them to do business with us. Can you come to the meeting? Will you come to the meeting? And he agreed to do so. So he walks into the conference room where we're all assembled and graciously introducing himself to everyone in the room. And the business, which was at our facility, the business was represented by a number of men, and there was a woman with them. So he walks over to the woman and graciously introduces himself and says, I try very, very hard not to swear in front of women. Well, I look at him and I start looking at all my colleagues in the room like, did he just say that? And then he goes on and says, and if I do swear in front of you, I apologize, but, I won't swear at you. I don't swear at women. Well, now I'm incredulous, and all my colleagues see my face. My pen flies out of my hand. I'm so incredulous, and lands on the table with a thump. And Al looks and sees the expression on my face. And he says, oh, Amy, I swear at Amy, but I don't consider her a woman. And that was the highest compliment he could have paid me. Remember, he hired me in the early part of the mid 80s. or I should say I joined the organization as an intern in the early 80s, joined full time in the mid 80s. There were no other women in the room when I attended my first league meeting. So for him to say, "Oh, Amy, I swear at Amy, but I don't consider her a woman," that was the highest compliment he could have given me. He considered me an employee, a teammate, a colleague, whatever it was without regard to gender. And that was one of the most special moments of my career.
Now, of course, the CEO, being CEO of the Raiders, didn't go on forever, of course. So it did end in 2013, May 11th, 2013. Um, how did that kind of come about, or was it just something that you made the decision it had to be done?
It didn't just come about, but I did make the decision that it was the right decision to make. It was the hardest decision I have made in my life. And I do recognize when saying that is a loud statement about the tremendous good fortune I've had throughout my life. Because if that was the hardest decision I've had to make, and if that ultimately is the hardest decision I will ever make, I understand how fortunate I am. It took me a long time to reach that decision. After Al passed away in October, um, I didn't even think about anything other than getting us through the rest of that season. And when that season ended, I began the soul searching associated with, do I stay or do I go? Do I stay or do I go? And as I said, hardest decision I've ever made, but it was the right decision.
Right, right. Now, of course, after leaving the Raiders, you did go on to CBS Sports and CBS Sports Network. Was that something that you had thought about doing initially, or did they kind of approach you about that?
Oh, not only was it something that I had not thought about doing, it was something I knew I was never, ever, 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 ever going to do. And that shows you how that worked out. I was self aware as I was struggling with the decision as to whether to stay or go, and even said to my husband, until I decide whether to stay or whether to go, I'm not going to be able to think about what's next. I need to reach that decision first. And he said, great, good plan. So, whatever you do, you do. Well, after I did make the decision to leave, I shortly thereafter was approached about, did I want to join CBS Sports? And I said, no, 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 no. Never, ever, 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 ever. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. And I will share with you now, by way of thanking you for allowing me to have this conversation with you, not on camera, that being on camera is my biggest fear. And yes, I do it now. And yes, I'm on CBS Sports now, but it is still the scariest thing I have ever done. Look, I can't say everyone in the world has an insecurity, because there are certainly those people who may not have insecurities. Good for them. I don't know what that's like. Everyone I know has an insecurity. My insecurity has always, always, always been my physical appearance. So the thought of being on television terrified me. Um, and you know the expression, it takes a village? Well, in this instance, it was someone in my village who said 3 words to me that gave me a new outlook, and I had the courage to say, I will do it. We were sitting around one evening, a large group of us, because it was me, of course, there was dessert involved. We were sitting around a fire pit having s'mores, and I was explaining that I was not going to do the CBS thing. No, 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 I was not going to do it. And I was explaining why. And the woman sitting next to me said very, very softly these 3 words: let it go. And they really resonated with me. And I decided, what the heck? And I said yes to CBS Sports. I am thrilled that I did. It doesn't mean I'm not still scared when those cameras go on and they say we're live, we're on air. But I will tell you that every single person at CBS Sports has been a tremendous, tremendous teammate. They have held my hand, both figuratively, and I've had colleagues on air who have done so literally, held my hand during commercial breaks, and they've helped me learn to have the courage to do that which frightens me. And by the way, like, now I get to sit on TV and talk about football And they do my hair and makeup for me, which I have no idea how to do. I've never learned to do that. They bring these magicians in from, I think it's Hogwarts, these hair magicians and makeup magicians, and they give me the courage to do it. And I'm thrilled that I worked up the courage to do it.
Well, definitely, your information and definitely all the things that you provide is definitely needed for CBS Sports and for their network. And also, of course, I did see where you were the Big Three chairman of the board as well. And I'm guessing that you and Ice Cube had a little bit of a connection there with that one.
Well, that's another thing I said no, 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 no to. I mean, we're now seeing how good I am at saying no, right? I'm like, I said no, 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 no. Cube and his longtime business partner, Jeff Quantenitz, formed the Big Three and invited me to join them. And I said, no, 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 I'm done with that. I'm done with that. And I ultimately joined them. Those two men are tremendous, tremendous recruiters. The Big Three is their vision. It is their dream. And it is really an honor to be involved. And I'm not in an operational role. I'm in a board role. But we're all hands-on. It's a startup. We are all hands-on all the time. And it's just an honor to be involved with them and see this dream come to fruition.
Well, it's definitely fun to watch. I definitely can say I enjoy watching it and seeing some of the players that either are around my age or younger than me that are not in the NBA still getting it done on the court, but albeit a half court. So it's definitely fun to watch.
And we did reduce the age, so there are younger players involved now. We are the only, a lot of people talk about things, as is said, many talk the talk, others walk the walk. We're the only league where there are women and men as head coaches. Nancy Lieberman joined us. Lisa Leslie joined us. Each of them in their first year won the full championship and were voted coach of the year by the players and the coaches. And it's a lot of fun. We're having a celebrity game coming up this coming weekend. And the two coaches in the celebrity game will be Cube and Clyde Drexler. How about that?
Nice. I still remember Clyde Drexler playing for Portland and then also going to Houston and joining Hakeem Olajuwon for a Phi Slamma Jamma.
Phi Slamma Jamma. Yeah, right. So now I have to decide, how do I do this? Do I root for Cube or do I root for Clyde, or do I let them know that whoever buys me the most ice cream is going to get my rooting interest?
Well, definitely they have the budgets for that, for sure. But one thing I do want to also talk about, of course, this is touring the AFC South, and of course we do have to talk about the AFC South, and there are some nice storylines going on there, just like in the Big Three with different storylines there. Well, of course, the one of the ones that has gone about, and I've noticed, is the Tennessee Titans. Of course, they moved to AJ Brown this offseason to the Philadelphia Eagles. A few different things happened. And of course, everyone's not very high on Ryan Tannehill at this time. So in terms of that, everyone's not high on the Titans from what people I've observed. So to me, I think they'll at least be 10-7 this year. Am I wrong to think that some people are kind of going a little overboard with the Titans or they're done talk?
Well, I think it's an interesting observation, and I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, because you have to look at the division as a whole, of course, because each of those teams play one another twice. So a lot of the record is going to be determined by intra, I always forget how to say that, by games within the division. So you look at how much turnover there's been in Indianapolis, a quarterback turnover. And by the way, I think that's an improvement for Indianapolis. In Houston, a head coaching turnover. I think that's an improvement for Houston. In Jacksonville, a head coaching turnover. I think that's a big, big, big improvement for Jacksonville. So, I still think Tennessee is interesting. They won the division last year by a wide margin, 12-5. Indy was closest, I believe, 9-8. I don't know that it's as much that Tennessee isn't going to be as proficient as last year, as the other teams are going to be improved, and they may knock one another off more than they did last year.
Definitely valid point. And you did mention the changeover with the Colts. Of course, their fifth quarterback in 5 years. Of course, if those that don't know, of course, it's Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett. You had Phillip Rivers, you had Carson Wentz, and now you have Matt Ryan. Now, some have mentioned that Matt Ryan could be the piece to take them to the next level or make them a Super Bowl contender. In my opinion, I still think they're missing a few things, but that's just me. Do you think that they are a Super Bowl contender, or are they a step down from that?
Boy, I had not yet considered them in that category. Certainly, Jim Irsay has announced, we're going for it all. We're going for the Lombardi this year. Of course, he also was very, very open. To his credit, he speaks very, very candidly. And he has spoken candidly of his view that it should be Lombardi or bust. And he spoke candidly of his view of Carson Wentz in a manner we don't often hear teams. You don't hear teams, whether owners or head coaches, discuss their players with that sort of candor. It happens, but not all the time. I do think Wentz to Ryan is a big improvement. But when you look back at the quarterbacks you named, like Andrew Luck, like Phillip Rivers, I don't think Matt Ryan is a Phillip Rivers or an Andrew Luck. Can you win with Ryan? Absolutely. Are you going to win only because of Ryan? Is he the quarterback that you want to turn to on the sideline and say, you have got to put this entire team on your shoulders and find a way to win? I don't think he's that category of quarterback. But do I think he's a tremendous, tremendous improvement over Carson Wentz? Yes, I do.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, but I just see the holes that are there. It was just, I find it amazing that, people can point out the holes or supposed holes the Titans have, but they can't point out the same holes that the Colts have. Because give me a prime example. The Titans have Robert Woods coming back off of the ACL injury, and he's looking pretty good, by the way. Treylon Burks. They have some rookies, of course, Kyle Phillips. They do have a guy in Racey McMath who's looked very good in training camp. So they have some pieces there. But people are saying their wide receiver position is done because A.J. Brown's gone. You go over to the Colts. They have Michael Pittman Jr., but who else do they have at the wide receiver spot? But yet their wide receiver core is some view it as better than the Titans, which I kind of don't understand that logic. That's just me. I don't know if you seeing something that I'm not seeing in terms
Well,
of that?
I guess I'm going to add only one thing to what you said. Not disagreeing with your points, but I'm going to add on the injury factor. I mean, we are all evaluating these rosters right now. We have seen players going down at camp throughout the league, ACLs, Achilles, every single year. I think, oh my gosh, this is so much more than any other year. And then I stop myself and say, Amy, you say that every year, so that can't be the case. So my point is, as to I guess I'll say as to Indy and Tennessee, more so than Houston and Jacksonville, an injury can turn the tide on these teams. And the reason I say more so than Houston and Jacksonville is my expectations for those teams aren't necessarily as great as for others. But I think we got to wait and see how some of the injury factors play out. You mentioned some players that are coming back from injury. Well, they got to keep the rest of the players healthy.
That's true, and nobody knows playing with players that and dealing with injuries more than the Titans do. They played with 91 players, I believe, last season, which was the NFL record.
Just
So
staggering.
yeah, and still the best record in the NFL in the regular season. Go figure. But as far as the teams you just mentioned, the Jaguars and the Texans, of course, they're both getting fresh starts. Of course, Lovie Smith in Houston, and in Jacksonville, you've got the Doug Peterson era. Now, in both of these situations, they're dealing with second-year quarterbacks, Davis Mills with the Houston Texans, and with the Jaguars, you're dealing with Trevor Lawrence. Now, both of these teams have done a few things in the opposite ways. One doesn't have quite as much talent around the other, but however, in my opinion, has the best wide receiver in the AFC South, and Brandon Cooks. And the other team has added a lot of pieces, albeit paying a lot for pieces, but brought a lot of pieces around in terms of Trevor Lawrence. Now, in your opinion, which one do you think is probably more built up for success? But I just want to also throw in too that Davis Mills does have Pep Hamilton, who did kind of help a guy named Andrew Luck become who he was too.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm saying that with a big smile on my face, obviously. And by the way, before I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't, in good fun and good spirit and the spirit of sportsmanship, say to you, really, You want to talk to a cowgirl about a Stanford quarterback? But that said, I will say when Davis Mills was coming out of Stanford, I said on that other pregame show, which you referenced early in our discussion on CBS Sports Network, keep your eye on Davis Mills because even this cowgirl recognized something special about the Stanford quarterback. And I'm glad he's not at Stanford anymore. Uh, I'll say both as to both the quarterback in Houston and in Jacksonville. They didn't have a solid chance at really at anything last year. There was so much turmoil around the Texans in the front office, elsewhere, everything. And we all know about sort of the nuttiness that was going on down in Jacksonville. So I'm looking for both of those quarterbacks to take significant steps forward this season. I think we're going to see more about each of those quarterbacks and what they may ultimately do, because I don't think they were positioned to succeed last year.
Yeah, they definitely weren't put in the greatest position, especially Trevor Lawrence actually being the adult in the room as a rookie on the offensive side in terms of the face of the team, I should say. And then you have in Houston with all the different situations and scenarios going on, which I'm pretty sure everyone could talk about and point something out there. Um, definitely it's going to be fun to watch the division and see who wins the division. I mean, you could flip a coin between the Colts and the Titans, in my opinion. I mean, the other day I picked the Colts to win the division, but of course that could change at the drop of the hat as well. So we'll see what happens, and it's definitely going to be interesting to watch and see how that develops. But of course, we've reached it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just going to jump in on you were getting me all enthused with what you were saying, because, of course, that's the fun of it. Everybody can make all the predictions they want. But the fun of the NFL, and it is built around this concept is parity, that the league is built around the concept of parity, which is as follows. Every fan of every team should go into every game and every season believing his or her team can win, believing his or her team can win any given game, but believing his or her team can win the division, believing his or her team can advance in the playoffs. That's the fun of it. There will be surprises.
Definitely. But, there's a few teams, unfortunately, I don't know if the surprises will pan out to be good ones.
We shall see.
Definitely. Now, of course, we've reached the end of the show, but of course, I don't end the show just ending the show. I do also have a game at the end of the show. Got 5 questions, 2 answers. Your choice to pitch which one you want to pick, but you got to pick one. Are you ready?
Well, okay, but you do know I'm the girl who went to law school on your show. So I might, have to at some point say, objection, Your Honor, calls for facts, not in evidence, or something like that. But all right, let's give it a go.
All right. Now, I'm going to ask, which one do you enjoy more, analyst or CEO?
Ooh.
Did you enjoy more, I should say?
Can it be a push? Can I say I like, and this is a very honest answer, and then I'll let you do more questions because I'm not really going to answer this one. I like the mixture. I really like the blend. Okay,
Gotcha.
We won't count that one because I didn't play by the rules.
That's okay. We've had plenty of guests that were kind of picking a little bit of both. So, hey, it's all good.
Okay.
Now I've got another one for you. This is a Raiders one. Rich Gannon or Tim Brown?
Oh boy, that's mean. Objection, Your Honor. Objection on every grounds. Hypothetical, calls for speculation, assumes facts not in evidence. Objection, Your Honor. Let's move along. I'm not going to pick one of them. Although I will tell you a funny Tim Brown story. He was drafted shortly after I joined the organization on a full-time basis. I'd done an internship for a few years and he had joined the organization. And at one point I said to Al, I'm kind of right around the same draft. I was drafted by you right around kind of the same time Tim Brown was. And Al looked at me and said, yeah, he was a first-round pick. You're a street free agent.
Oh my goodness! Now, of course, I've got a different location question for you, I should say. Oakland or Los Angeles?
That one I'm going to give a hard, easy, solid answer. I'm an LA girl. I'm a beach girl. I grew up in LA. It was always about 15 degrees too cold for me on any given day in the Bay Area. Going LA.
All right. We need the soccer NFL today.
Ooh, you're mean. You'd be a really mean teacher. Like you'd be like a really hard eighth grade teacher. Both.
I do my research.
I love my teammates on I love being able to participate on both. I will tell you it's funny on We Need to Talk. I sit there with these Olympians and these just tremendous journalists and broadcasters and I think what the heck am I doing on this show? My sweet spot is football, so if I get to talk about football all day long, I love that.
All right. And of course, I do have to give you a last tough one, and I'm pretty sure this will be an interesting answer. Boomer Esiason or Phil Simms?
Oh, you know I'm not answering that question. Objection, Your Honor. Calls for facts, not in evidence. Calls for speculation. Calls for a hypothetical. And right now, I would like to thank my mom and dad for law school because never has it been more valuable to me than at this moment.
Well, I had to ask it, so hey, I figured I'd throw it out there. But hey, I thank you again for playing along with the game I had today, and thank you again for coming on the show. And also, I kind of give a moment for guests to actually talk about what they have going on and where people can reach you and anything like that. So the floor is yours, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for inviting me to join you. Absolutely my privilege, my honor, my pleasure to do so. Even though you would have been a really, really hard, tough eighth grade teacher, I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. I do love my Twitter village. I'm on Twitter at Amy Trask, and in my Twitter village, we all exchange thoughts on a reasoned and reasonable manner. And when we disagree, we do so agreeably and we have a good time. So join my Twitter village if you would like. And also, the book I wrote, You Negotiate Like a Girl, will soon be coming out in paperback.
Well, hey, there you go. There you go. Well, I want to again say thank you for coming on my show. Thank you, everyone that was tuned in. You've been tuned in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.